For the past 3 weeks, we've explored the idea of living without fear. And we did some really powerful work together. Last week was an especially big one. It was for me. You guys? Yeah? Through a couple of quotes and a really incredible story, we realized that we are all one. Every person, everything, all around you, it's all one. And we realized that because we are one, we need to remember whose hands, whose thoughts, whose intentions we are allowing to impact our lives. Ours. It's our hands. Not your hands and my hands, they're our hands. Our thoughts, our intentions. And by realizing that another person's will, another person's actions are part of us, are part of our own, we begin to see a different way to respond to situations and events which are seemingly outside of us. We choose whether to lay down and accept what we think has been forced upon us, or stand up and embrace the moment in an inclusive way. Now, I am not saying that if someone comes up and puts a gun to you, that you're supposed to go, come here, give me a hug, bring it in. No, but you can choose your response. So today we're going to expand on the idea of fearlessly being all we came here to be by looking at yet another deep spiritual truth. In order for us to be all we came here to be, we need one another. We cannot go it alone. Just realizing we are one doesn't give us the strength. We need to act like it. And I realize that flies in the face of the oneness that we rediscovered and redefined last week. But stick with me. It'll all make sense, I hope. Doesn't mean. We were put on this earth together to do great things together. That is inherent in who we are and what we're made out of. We are made of the same spiritual stuff. We may have many hands, but there's only one heart. Be with that for a minute. Let that sink in. We have many hands, but only one heart. That's pretty big, isn't it? So everything we do is connected to everyone around us. There's a story of an old African king who's dying. And he calls his children, their husbands, wives, and relatives to his side, and he gives each of them a short but really sturdy stick. Break the stick, he instructs them. For some of them, this is fairly easy. For others, it's a bit harder, but eventually they all break their sticks in half. This is how it goes when a soul goes it alone in this world. They can all be broken. Next, the old man gives each of them another stick and some twine and says to them, now bind your sticks together in bundles of 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s, and break these bundles in half. As you might imagine, no one could break the bundles, not even the bundles of just 2 sticks. Upon seeing this, the old man smiled and said, we are strong when we stand with another soul. When we are with another, we cannot be broken. This is how I would like you to live after I am gone. Isn't that beautiful? We're strong when we stand together. In truth, community is necessary for us to be able to fulfill our purpose here on earth. We need one another to enhance God's experience of loving itself. I believe there can be no greater place to stand together than in a spiritual community. like this. Why do you think I've been doing the music here for most of the last 20 years? Why do you think I'm standing up here today? It's because of who we are. All of us. Not the building. Us. Together. And that's what makes a community a spiritual one. Because that concept is so much bigger than the concept of church. Isn't it? In Eastern teachings, a spiritual community is referred to as Sangha. Sangha is a community of individuals dedicated to creating and sustaining an environment that nurtures and supports reverence, mindfulness, and spirituality as a lifestyle, not a weekly practice. The way we live. One of those primary elements created in Sangha is a feeling of safety for all those involved. Each person is respected, accepted, and loved as they are. It's a safe place to be who you are. It's an environment where individual creativity is incubated and authentic self-expression is encouraged. It's a place where your greatness is believed in without question. In Sangha, the elements of joy and seva, or service to others, are present. And in such an environment, it's amazing to witness others unfold in their own unique spiritual nature with grace, elegance, and ease in their own time and space. This is a true spiritual community, true Sangha. This is a good place to be, is it not? In his book, The Art of Being, on page 32, Dennis Merritt Jones writes, Sangha is not a building. It is a consciousness held by a collective group that welcomes, celebrates, and honors you just the way you are. You'll know it because it's as if you've walked into a wall of love, immersing you in it in the most amazing way. Isn't that cool? You've walked into a wall of love. I feel that so often. Another beautiful quote which describes Sangha in a different way comes from Starhawk in her book, Dreaming the Dark. Somewhere there are people to whom we can speak with passion without having the words catch in our throats. Somewhere a circle of hands will open to receive us, eyes will light up as we enter, voices will celebrate with us whenever we come into our own power. Community means strength that joins our strength to do the work that needs to be done. Arms to hold us when we falter. A circle of healing. A circle of friends. Someplace where we can be free. And one more beautiful statement about Sangha. This time from our own Ernest Holmes in Can We Talk to God? And this one got me this week. It's on page 10. There is something in us that longs for the sympathetic understanding, the kindly response, the sense of a presence which is warm, pulsating, and colorful. We must have it. And I sense that as we meet each other in love and friendship, in the warmth of a handshake and good fellowship, it is God. What else could it be? The hand that gives is the hand of God. And the eye that sees is the eye of God. In each other, through each other, we contact God. That sounds like utopia, doesn't it? I mean, this is Garden of Eden stuff here. So when we are all in spiritual community, we live in this space all the time, right? We don't go home and revert back. No, we're not. And why not? Now, as I was contemplating this and looking at what's going on in my life right now and in the life of our spiritual community here, I often take cues for the messages that I write from not only what's happening here and my life, but from what happens when I'm talking to people here and out in the world. And I saw a human behavior that we all engage in to some degree or another. And this can knock us right out of Sangha, quicker than greased lightning. What's a common barrier to experiencing this beautiful paradise I've been describing? Well, it's spoken out about in Don Miguel Ruiz's life-changing book written in the late 90s. It was called The Four Agreements. Some of you might have read it. It's based upon the wisdom he learned as a master of the Toltec tradition. The Toltecs were a pre-Columbian Mesoamerican culture based in Mexico near Hidalgo. And their incredible knowledge has been closely protected and passed on through these many decades from master to apprentice. And I'm sorry I had to give you the history level lesson, but it's who I am, folks. You got to deal with the history. It comes with the words. Now, as these bits of wisdom, as these pearls were passed down, each lineage took on its own flavor, its own personality, but the basic knowledge is the same throughout all of them. Here's one of the agreements that Ruiz suggested we make with ourselves in order to live in what he calls white magic. He defines white magic as the place of creating, giving, sharing, and loving. Sounds like Sangha to me. How about you? It is the agreement not to make assumptions. We have a tendency to make assumptions about almost everything, don't we? I know we've all heard that old saying, and I couldn't resist this. When you assume, you make. I knew y'all wouldn't disappoint me. Thank you. Yeah, that one. That's the one. The problem with making assumptions is that once we've made them, we believe them, whether or not they're true. We are absolutely positive that they're real. And then we emotionally respond accordingly to them. I love what Ruiz says on page 67. He says, "It is very interesting how the human mind works. We have the need to justify everything, to explain and understand everything in order to feel safe. We have millions of questions that need answers. It's not important if the answer is correct. Just the answer itself makes us feel safe. That is why we make assumptions. If others tell us something, we make assumptions. And if they don't tell us something, we make assumptions to fulfill our need to know and replace the need to communicate. Even if we hear something and don't understand, we make assumptions about what it means and then believe the assumptions. We make all sorts of assumptions because we don't have the courage to ask questions. That's interesting. And of course, the way to stop this behavior that really messes up that Sangha consciousness is so darn simple. Ask. Communicate. Make sure that the communication is clear. If you don't ask, you don't understand. Have the courage to ask questions until you're clear as you can be, until you've satisfied all of those question marks. And even then, don't assume that you know all there is to know about any given situation. And while I agree with all of that completely and totally, there are deeper assumptions that we need to question as well. Those are the assumptions that we make about ourselves that cause us to make assumptions about others. Think about that. We're assuming something about ourselves that causes others to react a certain way. We think they're going to do it. This is where it got me. This is where the whole sermon concept I started with went. Okay. I am going to allow myself to be vulnerable. So know that I'm trusting you. I earned a bachelor's degree in ministry and leadership with a focus on family ministry. Pretty cool, right? What if I told you that it's from a mainstream Christian seminary? Why did I choose that particular seminary? Well, for almost 3 decades, maybe even longer, I've felt not only called to be, but in recent years, as I've been ignoring the subtle, persistent urging, I have felt blatantly told that I am meant to be a minister, and my family can attest to that. Not only was this seminary program far more affordable than the classes through the Ernest Holmes Institute, we're talking thousands of dollars more affordable, but it also allowed and encouraged me to learn about other faiths and world religions in depth. I got to do a whole lot of comparative religion stuff. And I've explained in the past few weeks that my goal since I think I was 9 or 10 when I started visiting my friend's Seventh-day Adventist church. And then I visited all kinds of different churches because I wanted to know. So I was young. So I've been doing this all my life. And what it is, my ultimate goal is to be able to communicate with people of all faiths in a way which honors the belief system that they subscribe to. It doesn't disrupt the way that they frame their faith. I want people to be able to really hear what I'm saying and to know beyond any doubt that I hear them without feeling pressured or challenged or that I'm trying to convert them. You know what I mean? We've all felt that way. Now, I worked long and hard these last several years to obtain this degree. And although it's something that I am proud of, I felt insecure coming up here to speak to you. I made the assumption that you would feel like I don't understand what it is to be New Thought. That you would feel I didn't understand what religious science is really about. That I couldn't possibly have the knowledge to fill a ministerial role here. I made that assumption even though I've attended this church my entire life. Notwithstanding the visits to friends' churches. I've been here. You all know this. I've said it since I was wee. So despite that, despite the fact that I have studied religious science and metaphysics in many levels, in many avenues, in great depth, both officially and unofficially, my entire adult life. Despite the fact that I've taken several foundations classes and focused study classes, and as I mentioned, I was the music director here for most of 20 years. And in spite of the fact, and I bet you can ask any of my family members and anybody else who's known me for a long period of time, lots of the people here can tell you, I have literally walked the walk for as long as I can remember. For so long that it's ingrained in me and intrinsic to who I am. And still, I assumed you would discredit me based solely upon the school who gave me my official piece of paper. Because let's be objective here. That's really what it is, right? It's a fancy piece of paper that says I did a lot of stuff and I know stuff. I allowed myself to feel limited, to feel that I couldn't be enough for you. I disrupted and derailed Sangha by allowing myself to feel separate from you, the family of my spiritual home. That really hit me hard this week to realize that I had limited myself. And despite all of those assumptions, here I am. And you can tell me later if I'm wrong, but I feel like I'm proving what I believe to you. That I'm proving the fundamental truths that I know and actively practice to you. Proving who I am to you every week that I stand up here. Honestly, if I hadn't told you any of this, would you have questioned it? Would you have suspected that I went to a mainstream Christian theology school? Yeah, I didn't think so. And yet, I let my assumption allow me to feel insecure. I'm there. I got there. Thank you, Kim. And if I go back, just smack me. It's all good. In his book, World Plah, I can speak, I swear I can. Words That Heal Today, on page 25, Ernest Holmes says something that really, really spoke to me about all this. He says, we reach God in others by reaching out from God within the self. Always, the God in others will respond to the God in us, but never beyond the level of our inward spiritual awareness. Think about that. People can't connect with you unless you're reaching them from here, openly and honestly, and looking at them with nothing but love. And the second that you make an assumption, you've limited that flow between yourself and anybody else. So let's decide today to take some time to really look within and ask ourselves, what belief am I holding about myself that causes me to make an assumption about another? Let's really spend some time. This is not something that hit me all at once. I really had to look at it, and I'm sure there's a lot more to dig up. Let's really spend some time meditating on that. And let's go a step further. Let's decide to regularly dedicate time to ask ourselves that question. Because let's face it, we're all so used to doing it that we don't even realize it's happening. Look at my story. It took a passage in a book to rattle that free in my consciousness, and even then it took some doing to connect the dots. If we can move into the habit of immediately questioning not only the surface assumptions we make, but also the assumptions underlying the assumptions, we'll move in entirely new directions. Our relationship with ourselves and then with others will be truly transformed, and we will have the ability to create Sangha, a spiritual community, one which is ever expanding and ever thriving right here in this place and in our world. Let me end with this beautiful Hopi elder's prophecy. It goes like this. To my fellow swimmers, life is a river flowing now very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid, who will try to hold on to the shore. They're being torn apart, and they'll suffer greatly. Know that the river has its destination, and all is well. The elders say we must let go of the stone, push off into the middle of the river, swim, and keep our heads above the water. And I say, see who is there with you and celebrate. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration, for we are the ones we've been waiting for. Thank you.